This is the warm-up that I do on my upper body day workouts. I use a protocol called the RAMP protocol, which stands for Raise, Activate, Mobilize, Potentiate. So this is phase 1 of the warm-up, raise, which basically means that I'm just trying to raise my heart rate, sweat rate, core temperature, and breathing rate, essentially priming my body for the workout that's to come. So for phase 1 of the warm-up, I like to use this ski erg machine as my choice of cardio for pretty obvious reasons, because it's a really good stimulus for the upper body as it takes the upper body muscles and joints through pretty much full range of motion. If you don't have access to a ski erg machine, then I recommend using a rowing machine, as that also takes the upper body through a pretty good range of motion. And if you don't have access to a rowing machine, then of course running on a treadmill or a stationary bike will do the trick too. After spending about 5 minutes on the ski erg machine, I move on to phase 2 of the warm-up, which is to activate. So here I'm using a resistance band attached to a pole to warm up my external rotators or my rotator cuff muscles. I'm trying to think about keeping my shoulder blades down and back throughout this movement. If you don't have access to a resistance band, you can also do this on a cable machine. Then I'll do the same exercise but from a slightly different position. So here I'm doing it with my shoulder in abduction, meaning that my elbow is out to the side. Again, I'll do roughly 10 to 15 reps on each arm. And then finally, I'll move on to these straight arm shoulder extensions. I'm starting off in a very protracted position, meaning that my scapula is being pulled forward. As you can see here, it gets pulled forward, and then the first movement that I make after that is a scapular retraction, trying to keep my arm straight. Once my scapula is in a down and back position, I'll keep it there and extend my arm towards the side of my body. I'll pause there for about a second and then repeat this for approximately 10 reps. This is a good exercise to warm up the rotator cuff muscles. It also requires some lats, tricep, and lower traps. I'll then move on to some hanging scapular retractions, yet another exercise to warm up the scapular muscles, but this time in a different plane. So the weight of your body and gravity makes it quite difficult to depress your scapulars, which requires your lower traps to set those scapulars down and back into position. When you're in the dead hang position here, it actually provides a really good stretch for the lats and the muscles around the shoulders and scapulars. So when you're in that passive dead hang position, allow your scapulars to elevate, or think about bringing your shoulders all the way up to your ears. And then during the active portion of the dead hang, you want to think about scapular depression and retraction. And remember, you want to keep your arms straight throughout the full range of motion of this exercise. Then I'll move down to the ground for some Supermans. This trains the back and shoulder cuff in yet another position. So here we've got shoulder flexion, shoulder extension, and shoulder abduction, while at the same time trying to externally rotate the shoulder by lifting the back of your hand towards the ceiling. And it also works the spinal erectors and even your glutes and hamstrings. So as you can see, I've activated my rotator cuff muscles from 3 very different positions. We've got a standing position, a hanging position, and a lying position. And finally, the last exercise of the activation phase of the warm-up are hand release push-ups. So when you lift your hands up off the ground, you're activating the muscles on the back side of your body. And as you push the ground away, you're activating the muscles on the front side of your body, such as your chest, triceps, and shoulders. Now it's time to move on to phase 3 of the warm-up, Mobilize. So here I've moved back to the chin-up bar for some single arm hanging. I'll do about 10 to 15 reps of these with slow and controlled form. I like to keep this dynamic by alternating from hand to hand, and I just hold for about 1 to 2 seconds each arm. This is a great exercise to stretch the lat and increase shoulder joint mobility. It is quite a difficult movement that requires a large amount of grip strength and coordination. So if you can't do this with single arms, you can always hang off both arms and swing your legs side to side, which again will provide a really good stretch for the lats and increase shoulder joint mobility. And the final mobility exercise that I like to perform is a deficit push-up. I set up 3 boxes so that I can allow my chest to drop well below the level of those boxes. As you can see here, the shoulder joint goes through a very large range of motion. I'm trying to get my elbows driving up towards the ceiling and get my upper arm behind my body. And of course, this exercise serves the purpose of both a mobility exercise and an activation exercise, because clearly you need to activate your chest, triceps, and shoulders to get yourself from that deficit position back to the top of the push-up. You should feel an amazing stretch through your pecs and your anterior delts, and even your triceps at the bottom of the rep. So don't be afraid to hang out down there for a few seconds to really make the most of that stretch. And now it's time for the 4th and final phase of the warm-up, which is to potentiate. During this phase, you'll begin your warm-up sets with the exact same form that you'll be using for your working sets. For example, if your first exercise of the day is a dumbbell bench press, you'll do a very light set for approximately 15 to 20 reps. Then you'll slowly increase the load set by set and reduce the reps set by set until you reach your working weight. For example, you might do 60% of the load of your working set for 5 to 6 reps, then 70% of the load of your working set for about 4 to 5 reps, so on and so forth until you've completed 3 to 5 warm-up sets. I like to keep my warm-ups as efficient and concise as possible, so I try not to let them go for any longer than 10 to 15 minutes. The idea is to flow from phase to phase until you feel primed and ready to begin your workout.